Why can't we just speak like adults? We've got the chapter leaders in Maine on the program tonight, so let me give them a proper introduction, shall I? We are about to talk to Camille and Samantha, and they hail from Maine and run an off-the-grid homestead and learning center. I got to know all about that, by the way. Combining the traditional lobsterman captain and the homeschooling entrepreneur mama, they are not shy about standing up for freedom and protecting children of the future. Welcome, Camille and Samantha from Maine, all the way from Maine. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm so glad you could be here. Tell me how you got involved in Gays Against Groomers, by the way.
We met Jamie and the Gays Against Groomers team while we were at AmFest. And yeah, we exchanged info and started the conversation. And she sort of asked, if we were interested in joining the team.
Yeah, and it's really, honestly, it's kind of like a thing that you really want to do is join the fight when it comes to things like this. And I grew up in the state of Maine. I was out really young, and I couldn't imagine being a kid nowadays growing up with the hardcore peer pressures coming from every direction, the pharmaceutical pressures, the gender ideology pressures. And it's like, man, it's like so many pressures just for kids who need that time and space to be kids for as long as possible while they're developing. So it was kind of
so with you. I feel so sorry for any kid, especially female children, because right now that's where it's all at right now, is the 3,000% rise in, early, what do they call it? Rapid onset gender dysphoria in girls. And this is really affecting girls who might be more butch, right? Girls who are tomboys, girls who are not stereotypically girly, right? Whatever it is to be girly. I mean, honestly, there's so many different ways to be a girl, to be a woman. It offends me on a deep level that these people are out there telling children that telling little girls that if you don't like Barbies, you're not a girl. Excuse me? What were you guys, what was it like for you growing up?
I was one of those girls growing up that I dressed like a ninja. I think every single Halloween.
I love that. Ninja Sam.
Yeah. And I was so cool. And the thing is too, is that there's so many girls nowadays that just really look up to their peers, their older brothers, their big cousins. Like I grew up.
Their dads.
Yeah,
maybe.
their dads.
Right? What about girls who love their dads and grandpas and want to be like them? Please tell me, what else do you do?
Yeah, well, I'll bring up the kid stuff first. I mean, so Camille, my partner, has 2 kids, and so we're really involved. We homeschool, and we create like a really amazing environment for them to explore their own skill base. And that's a really big thing about kids. And what we have to remember, so like I came out when I was really young. I always knew that I was gay. And I also, as I've grown up over the years, I now know that that is such a small portion of who I am. It's so small in the grand scheme of things. And I would be horrified if someone tried to push that on me like that is just it. And so we have to be really careful because for many, many years, society and many other forces are breaking down the family units and breaking down the communities. And we really have to band together and be like, well, how do we actually improve our mental health? How do we build skills, build character? So many people, it used to be about building character before there was the internet. We really focused on our families, how we thrive together, how we lift each other up, and what we can do to improve our environments. We just have to be careful not to allow, the pressures of victimization and over-medication and things along those lines to affect the youth in the ways that they are seriously affecting the youth right now.
Mm-hmm. I want to share something from I was on her podcast. Her name is Stephanie Wynn, and she has a wonderful podcast called Some Kind of Therapist. And she's a therapist that basically broke off from her ranks and is speaking out against and explaining why the therapy world has been hijacked by the transgender cult. But anyway, during our podcast, she said something that really stuck with me. She said in the therapist world, it was a very common unspoken, like you don't have to talk about this. They all understood. And she used this word foreclosed. foreclose. She goes, you never want to foreclose on your identity too early. So let's say a child comes to them and said, this is awful, my life is over, or I really want to do this and it's unhealthy. But as a therapist, you're not supposed to try to, one way or the other, but you're supposed to help them think through it. And one of the things she said was they're always trying to remind them, hey, you're 13 years old or you're 16 years old. Life, you've got this whole life ahead of you that you don't know how you're going to feel at 18, at 25, at 30. She goes, you never want to foreclose on your identity too early because you always want that option to be able to change your mind about your career, about your hobbies, about your friends, about all kinds of things. She goes, so she's talking about her own self. She goes, for my industry to completely go the other way, where as soon as a 10-year-old goes, I think they go, I must affirm them. And not only that, you're not only locking them in mentally, but you're locking them in physically.
It says, Megan, will you ask Camille and Samantha if during the ages of 12 to 15, did they have questions about their identity?
I mean, does that ever end? I just want
right?
what kind of question? I get these types of questions a lot because I am a grown-up homeschooled kid. And so there was no question I was going to homeschool my kids. And so for me, I have not experienced much of the indoctrination of the public school system, hardly any of it at all. And people constantly ask, like, when do you start teaching your kids? When do you do this with your kid? Like, when do they start learning? It's like, we're learning in the womb. We're constantly learning in life, and that never ends.
It never ends. No, you're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because more people need to say that. The concept of who am I is an age-old question that has been asked by philosophers from the beginning of time and continues to be asked all throughout the span of your life. It's the great question. Who am I? What's my purpose? Am I? What is my place in the world? What is my purpose? Yes, thank you, Leah. This is a question that even the most brilliant philosophers fail to answer sometimes. So how can we ask a kindergartner, who are you? This is the biggest question that faces mankind. Cult tactics.
Yes.